Hi, this is Michael Leaks, and I'm here to discuss the hot topic of abortion. With me here, I have the rape that abortion that I have completed, and my first thoughts on working through this worksheet is it was very colorful in the explanations or reasons to or to not have an abortion. Uh, multiple scenarios, multiple sub scenarios of the scenarios, and really made me think about this. Before I started this, I asked my wife if she would sit down and not necessarily do me with it, but I read every scenario with her. And what I have learned in being married to my wife, who's right now 7 months pregnant, is our ideas on abortion, which I thought were alike, are actually very different. And not in the fact that she's right or I'm wrong, but she has more knowledge on the on abortion and pregnancy than I would, obviously because she's a woman and I'm a man. And we started off with the first two, which happened to be the most interesting in my opinion because of the lack of consistency that I showed in my original thoughts. The first one is someone has a pregnancy as a result of rape. So immediately my answer was one. That is definitely the one of the most justified reasons for an abortion. The second one is where my inconsistencies came in. Is still the same thing as one, as the first one, a pregnancy resulting rape, but now the woman who was raped was a prostitute. So my immediate thought was this is definitely a five because my thought she's a prostitute. So she had it coming, right? Well, my lovely wife corrected me and said, "What's the difference between the first and second?" I said, "Well, one's a prostitute." She says, "Yes." So there's a difference in the women, but the scenario is still the same. They were both someone forcefully had sex with them that resulted in a pregnancy. So therefore, I had to be as consistent with my thought process as I could because the whole thing I've gotten from this philosophy course so far is consistency. It doesn't matter what what philosophical way you do or think things through, as long as you can be consistent with that thought process all the way through. So after uh, the conversation I had with my wife, it very occurred to me that I had to try to be as consistent as possible when doing this. And so to remain consistent, I had to give the second scenario a one also. If I'm going to give the first one a one, because they were both forcefully had sex with. The second most interesting one for me was one that me and my wife completely disagreed on, and we still do, but it's just uh, not necessarily a right or wrong, but she has a better understanding of the situations. And me being a man, I can't carry a child, I can't give birth to a child, so I would never be faced with the situations anyway, or the decisions that have to be made when it comes to abortion. But there's a pregnancy result of a contraceptive failure. I give that a one. People are doing what they need to do to be practice safe sex, safe as you can possibly be outside of marriage, uh, and I gave that a one. The second example was there was a couple and they got pregnant and they did not use any contraceptives to try to prevent the pregnancy, but they didn't want to go through the pregnancy because it would jeopardize the woman's career goals. Um, I'll give that a five, simply because when you, I live a life motto. Uh, every action you do in life has a consequence, and that consequence is good or bad. The word consequence doesn't necessarily mean bad. And this couple knew that there were consequences uh, of their actions, or that they were taking part in. They knew that when you have sex, that one of the things that come out of sex is pregnancy, and they did nothing to prevent that. So in my mind, you did nothing to prevent it. You knew the consequences. If you're grown enough to do the deed, then you're grown enough to live with the consequences. Um, as far as the other one, they were somewhat responsible uh, or not somewhat, they were responsible in going upon having sex, and the odds didn't come out in their favor. So I gave that one a one, uh, just because they did what they were supposed to do and it happened. Um, I could have been a five with that also, simply because both couples were both having sex and both knew the possible outcome of it, and just because one used contraceptives and one didn't, doesn't make the scenarios any different. In my opinion, it does uh, make them different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my opinion is right on that matter. But there were a lot of really interesting scenarios on here. I chose those four as the ones that caught my attention the most, and also it kind of exposed my bias to certain situations and my lack of consistency with this topic, which I thought I had a very consistent uh, thought process on this topic, which this worksheet has proven that I'm very inconsistent, and I'll show you one more time that my uh, answers were all over the place. It was left to right, right to left, down the middle, one extreme to the other to neutral. So I'm very inconsistent in my thought process of abortion, which I thought I had a consistent viewpoint, which this worksheet proved that I do not.